next generation technology solutions. Sunny has since led DMI from a humble startup to become the worldwide organization it is today. With hundreds of clients and thousands of employees, we are grateful to have him here to share his thoughts and experiences on mergers and acquisitions.
Okay, thank you very much. So I started my company in 2002, originally as a government contractor. Most of you know, if you're an IT company in the local area, GovCon's in your backyard. Had a good run growing the business, and then in about 2010-12, I decided that, why am I only doing government contracting? I'm really doing emerging technology, and there's a bigger market for it than just the US government. So we decided to expand the business and the capabilities globally with M&A. And so M&A is a really good strategy for growth, domestic and international, obviously if done properly. So what we did was come up with a strategy on building out our business from a capability standpoint, end-to-end digital transformation solutions, but also from a geographic footprint, so we could get international markets. So from a period of 2012 up until this past May, we've been making acquisitions. We've done 8 in the last 7 years. It took my company's footprint from just being headquartered here in Bethesda, Maryland, to 26 offices in 7 different countries. So we now have a global employee base of roughly 3,000 people, 400 million in revenue. And the vast majority of that growth was done through M&A, and then of course now we kind of augment that with organic growth as well. So I'll just tell you from my experience some of the challenges in M&A. It can be a very effective tool. Identifying the business. So how do you go about identifying a company? So let's say I decided, hey, I want to expand my cloud computing capabilities. Well, where do I go and find a company in cloud that I can buy? So you have to figure out how you identify it and to hire a bank or broker. In fact, in one case, one of the acquisitions we made, we actually used Google to figure out, okay, who's good at this, and a company's name popped up, and that's how we identified them. Having the right advisory team in place for the deal is really important. You have to do everything from hiring a law firm to paper the deal, and hopefully that they give you a good due diligence checklist of things to go through, to a audit partner to look at the quality of earnings of the company you're looking to acquire. You need a good banker, whether it's financing the deal for you or doing the transaction. Some of the other challenges are, okay, I found a company, I have the money, financing, I want to buy it. Are they going to be a right fit? What's their company culture like? If I'm a fun high-tech company and I'm buying a company that's a bunch of stodgy engineers, is that really going to work at the end of the day? What's the motivation of the seller? Why do they want to sell? What's the executive team like? So many other different factors to look into, but quite a few challenges because you want to do it right. Yeah, other than that, I mean, it's a really good tool on growing business. Due diligence is very important in any M&A. Looking at international laws if you're doing international. The due diligence checklist gets so onerous, but it's really important because things as innocuous as I'm buying this 100-person company, have they been paying for their Microsoft software licenses? Looking at things like that, because you would just assume it, and then you buy the business and realize that they owe $100,000 in software they haven't been paying. So anyway, I guess the biggest thing I've really taken away from all this is time kills all deals. So if anyone wants to do M&A, do a very thorough due diligence, but run that process quickly. And I guess that's pretty much my experience or trends on growing a business through M&A.
Do you have any questions?
Hi, Steve Sullivan, Small Business Administration. I'm just curious, as you've grown like this, have you tapped into any federal or state promotion services to help you identify clients to purchase or?
Yeah. Actually, Steve, I can just talk about it. Steve, it's funny you said that. You were my first client, SBA. In 2002 when I started, SBA was DMI's first client. I was a small 8A company, and you guys gave us $40,000 of your money to do some work for you. But no, I have not looked into any federal programs to help us with the growth of the M&A. We kind of organically financed most of the deals ourselves. The majority of the deals that we did were actually earn-out based, so we shifted a lot of the risk on the seller. You know, there was only 2 cash deals that we did, and you know, we were able to finance that internally. But no, I have to answer your question. I didn't look at any of the programs.
Do you have other questions?
Thank you. My name is Raj. I've known Sunny for a while. So my question here is, are you looking to inquire any more opportunity for businesses? Are you in the process of looking for more development land or businesses? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, Raj, that's a good question. So being in the digital transformation space, that's one of the hot elbow buzzwords, right? AI, machine learning, cloud. You know, it's such a fast growth sector that we are looking to continue to expand M&A, specifically our European presence. We have a pretty good presence in the U.S. and in Asia, but I think the European markets are really in high demand for our services, and I think it's going to be our strategy to buy a business in Europe to grow.
I got a question for Sunny. So you guys, I feel like you guys started not too long ago, right? How did you guys grow so significantly? I just wanted to kind of touch base on that because I think you guys did a phenomenal job, you know, going from a small company to pretty much a mid-size. You know, now you're playing with some big boys right now. So if you could just touch base on how you did that, what you had to do to accomplish that.
Yeah. So started government contracting, and you know, we were very fortunate that we did very well in that space. And what we did is, you know, if you're good at GovCon, you can actually kind of grow at a pretty significant clip every year. So we did that, and then we leveraged that momentum with the M&A, and that's really how we got our growth. And then with all the M&A we've acquired, I think we've done about 125 million plus worth of deals. All that revenue we brought in is growing at about 25% a year organically. So it's kind of organic, augmented with M&A has really gotten us that hyper growth.
Thank you. Hi, this question is for Sunny, and I'm with the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, so we absolutely value your business and hope that you continue to choose Montgomery County as you grow and expand your business. Pertaining to international mergers and acquisitions, dealing with foreign governments, dealing with agencies that aren't necessarily transparent, how difficult has it been when you're trying to evaluate an M&A deal and not having, say, the transparencies you would experience in working with like U.S. perhaps transactions versus that of foreign governments, and as timing is an issue with cultural differences, you know, trying to sign a deal but then also respecting some of the local values. What has been your experience like, and what have you been doing to achieve success?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. It's definitely been a heck of a learning experience and curve. Everything from for example, we have to deal with GDPR now, right? Europe has these majorly strict data privacy laws. So every single contract we have to be in super compliance. So I'll just give you an example. So we have an inside sales team in India that, you know, all the spam you guys get in your email, so we do that, we spam potential clients. You know, hey, check out what we could do, you know, you're interested, take a meeting or call. Well, one of the guys in our India office had sent an email to a senior executive at SAP in Germany, and that got forwarded to me, and it was, congratulations, you just violated German, you know, data privacy law. I'm like, great, you know, because apparently under the new privacy laws, when someone opts out, you can't just spam it. And it's a lot more strict than here in the U.S. We try to opt out. You still somehow keep getting those junk emails. Well, in Europe, you can't do that, specifically in Germany. So that was one example of kind of running into a challenge. There's so many different, cultural, HR, labor laws in countries are different. In Europe, I think we have to pay, pretty exorbitant severance in certain countries than we do here. The employment contracts, the way you monitor your corporate network, you have to have certain standards in place so that you're not spying on your employees, things like that. In India, we acquired a business and they had an office in Bombay. And, we come to find out they were violating a law in India that we didn't know about. It was if there's a female employee in the office who works past 8 p.m., by Indian law, a male from the office has to escort her home. And this company wasn't doing that. The reason that we found out of all these things is we had good advisors, right? And so that's kind of the key to it, is have a good advisory support system of consultants, that help you, navigate through all the different, cultural differences and country laws.
I was just going to say that question relates to my first question, because I don't know if you're aware, but the Department of Commerce Foreign Commercial Service has officers overseas that can investigate potential partners for you and maybe help you get through some of those challenges.
That's good to know, actually. I'll get more information on that. I didn't realize that the federal government did that.
My name is Anokware Ajima. We provide language services. As you grow, I'm interested in learning about management. You talk about strategy. When you started, you could oversee everything, but then now you work in different time zones and you go to different companies. You said you talk about company culture. How do you put all those together to manage the company? Is it centralized or there's some form of autonomy? How do you get all of this done in terms of managing the global company you have?
Sure. So from the beginning, each company that we intended to acquire, we really did a deep dive in their culture. And I know most people will just look at the finances and customer base and stickiness of that revenue. But we really, at DMI, made a big focus to look at each company's culture to make sure that, all the companies we acquired, there was a commonality and a similarity. Because we knew that the last thing you want to do, and you guys read in the news all the time, is go out and buy a business and then 3 years later have all the employees run away and customers run away and you're now holding it back. So I think from the beginning, as part of the process, look at culture. That's what we did to minimize the risk downstream. So we do have, autonomy in each of our different office units in terms of, culturally, the team in India will do different outings and things like that than the team in Barcelona. But there is a commonality, which we call, one DMI, which is a corporate culture that we've created where we respect each other. We have corporate values, trusted partner, employee focused, all that stuff. And so that's really helped, is literally a set of corporate values that's on the mouse pad of every DMI employee, right, wherever you are in the world. And so it kind of reminds us of why we're the same. And then, honestly speaking, it all starts from the top. So I'm a pretty hands-on guy, so I visit each office at least once annually, and I'm very engaged with our people. And once you create a culture like that, it kind of self-promotes a little bit if you allow it to, right? That each one kind of deal with, hey, this is our company, we're building it, here's our culture.
Okay, let's go to our next panelist. Michele Schimpp is the Duplicate Associate Administrator for the Office of International Trade and has over 20 years of experience managing U.S. government organizations and startup operations related to global creation, competitiveness, and economic growth. And we're excited to hear her ideas on what resources we have access to regarding important support.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks a lot. And thanks to both of you at the stand. This is a terrific group. I'm Michele Schimpp. I worked for 20 years on the international development side of the house and joined SBA 4 years ago and have really enjoyed translating the work that I did across Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East, and helping businesses to grow through exports, trade, and investment, and then doing it here domestically. Over the last year, I was SBA's representative to the White House Initiative on Asian American and Pacific Islanders. Have you guys ever heard of that? It's a White House, yeah, okay. It was really interesting because I got to look at SBA from a broad enterprise view. How did our loan programs benefit Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders? How about government contracting? What should we be doing? We held listening sessions, 7 different listening sessions across the U.S. In a nutshell, we learned while Asian American male business owners are doing a really good job of taking advantage of SBA loans and services, women-owned businesses that are Asian American or Pacific Islander really aren't. And so it suggested a whole range of things that we could do more of. And then just several months ago, I joined our Office of International Trade, and it's a real privilege to work there. Steve Sullivan is with me and he's been in the office long before me. And Katie Sly just joined SBA. She was working in government of Minnesota, actually on Asian American Pacific Islander advocacy vis-a-vis the legislature. So it's terrific to have her here. And my goal today with you is to find current and future exporters and make sure that SBA is helping your companies to grow and succeed. Slide number 1. We live in this trade-driven economy, right? 58% of the world's 80 trillion GDP is from global trade. More than 60 years ago, when the SBA was created, it accounted for less than 25%. So this is a huge shift and a huge opportunity. Next slide. But this new economy is very, very different from the one that at least my parents and I grew up in, right? 1960, 24% of the world's GDP was trade. In 80, it has grown up to 38%. Finally, the year 2000 breaks 50%. And then today, 58% of this $80 trillion economy means 46 trillion in market opportunities out there. Next slide. Same show goes for the US economy, right? You see, but it's interesting that as of today, 28% is in the trade. I guess this is part of the function of how big our US economy is. Nearly 1/3 of our GDP is generated by trade, but small businesses capture a real minority share of that in comparison to the big businesses. The revenues of Fortune 500 companies have grown at twice the rate of our US GDP, in part due to tapping the benefits of trade. And for small businesses, it's really an opportunity lost today. I really love that SBA has the mandate and the responsibility to help US small businesses to grow revenue, sales, and in turn grow the US GDP through trade. Can I ask for a show of hands in the group? How many people in the room sell internationally? All right, thank you. How many people in the room sell products or services to a company that exports? Okay, you count as what's called an indirect exporter. So you count in the SBA world as eligible for export loans and services. And then are there people in the room, how many people would like to do international work but don't currently? All right, so next slide. I want to talk to you all about, maybe convince more of you in the room about the value to your businesses and taking advantage of trade. I think what you can see here is 95% of the world's consumers and 2/3 of all purchasing power reside outside of the US. 98% of US small business exporters are small businesses, and they account for 1/3 of export value, totaled at about $2 trillion. But why do you think that small businesses, where 98% of exporters only benefit from 1/3 of the overall export value? because only 1% of small businesses export, only 1%. You know how many firms that accounts for? Just 300,000 in our entire country. It's a real opportunity lost. So as a government executive, I'm intrigued. Can I turn that 1% to 2% or 3% by talking to groups like you and getting you interested and getting you taking advantage of the resources that SBA has to bring to bear? Wow, what kind of impact it would have on our economy. And for you as businesses, I hope you become motivated to learn that there are more than 28 million potential new export customers for you to reach. Hopefully this will change your mind a bit. Next slide. This just shows you by sector the relative importance of the various businesses across the board, with most in wholesale trade, and then the second largest in manufacturing. For a small business, for business period, selling internationally is smart business. Research shows that U.S. exporters are more financially stable, they expand faster, they create higher paying jobs. It's not surprising that businesses that export are more resilient, right? They've got a diversified customer base. It also stabilizes sales, particularly for those who make seasonal products. And then for manufacturing sector, a recent California study also showed that those businesses that export stay in business longer. So now I want to transition quickly to some of the products and services offered by the SBA that address the challenges that small businesses face. We know that roughly a third of U.S. small businesses say they don't know where to start. Another, a little under a third, say the regulatory environment is too complex. And another third basically say it's too hard to get financing. SBA has the solutions to these problems. Next slide, please. So the first one is solution number one. We help small businesses find overseas buyers through the State Trade Expansion Program. Did anybody in this room know that you could get a grant from your state with the help of SBA that can help you learn how to export, participate in a trade mission or trade show, obtain services to support your foreign market entry? Are you listening to this? We can be really helpful. Translate your websites, right, for overseas buyers, or design international marketing products and campaigns. Like SBA doesn't do grants. We really don't do grants, but this small program actually does. On the next slide, you'll see over the last 3 years alone, $44 million in awards through states supported over $1.5 billion in export sales. Those export sales could be yours via a grant provided at the state level. So if you want to learn more, on the Maryland side, our step partner is the Maryland Department of Commerce out of Baltimore. And if you're in Virginia, the step partner is the Virginia Economic Development Partnership in Richmond. But just in general, the website to remember is sba.gov, international trade, one word. And it'll show you where you go. Secondly, I want to talk to you about our trade finance portfolio. Basically, SBA finances international sales because we know that a third of U.S. small business exporters find it harder to find financing for their international work. And we know that businesses are often forced to turn away from international business because they don't have the ability to scale up to the large international orders they need to meet. SBA partners with lenders, like we do in all of our loan programs, and have 3 specialized products. And these are products, again, not just for firms who are currently exporting, but if you sell to an exporter, you're also an indirect exporter and eligible. And last year alone, these 3 products resulted in about $2.3 billion in export sales. So those export sales could be yours. The first is our export loan program, and that's for quick access to capital for financing up to $500,000. You can apply for lines of credit prior to finalizing an export sale contract so that you have adequate financing in place by the time the contract is enacted. Secondly, export working capital is for businesses who've been in business for a year, at least a year, and you can use it, for example, to fulfill your export orders and finance international sales up to $5 million. and then the International Trade Loan Program. It can even help if your company has been adversely affected by foreign competition and you need to retool or enter a new market. And again, that's up to $5 million. Next slide. What's the value proposition for you? Well, for lenders, we say it's a 90% guarantee. So it very much de-risks for lenders working with businesses who are exporters. And for you, rather than needing to require advance payments from your clients, you can offer payment terms that make you more competitive. Rather than depleting your current resources, you can use the loans to proactively market and expand your capacity. And you can increase your company's borrowing base without affecting or taking away from domestic financing. If your current bank doesn't work with SBA on this loan portfolio, we can help you find a bank that does. And if you want to learn more, we have an entire network of decentralized export finance managers. The Mid-Atlantic gentleman is Bill Huck. I'd be happy to put you in touch with him if you'd like to learn more about how to do this. A third solution that SBA offers, I'm going to touch on real quickly, is just for the people who don't know where to start. There are a whole range of SBA partners at the local level, down the street, across town. SCORE, at any stage where your business is, we have a network of volunteer business mentors. Small Business Development Centers, SBDCs, again, exist to provide more in-depth hand-holding for startups to mature companies to grow, and a number of these small business development companies have specialized internationally trained counselors. So the SBDC in Maryland is hosted at the University of Maryland. In DC, it's at Howard University, and Virginia is George Mason University. You can just Google, find an SBDC. And similarly, for you women-owned companies, the Women's Business Centers are a terrific resource that you can again find by sba.gov/women. Pretty simple. Finally, I was asked to just touch on what we do in terms of trade policy. We have a small trade policy team that works together with the U.S. Trade Representative to negotiate trade agreements and represent the interests of small business. We were at the table in the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement negotiations, 7 rounds of negotiations, again talking about the kinds of issues that matter, transparency and IP and other rights. We have an SBA trade hotline that you can call. The number's up there, so you can just write it down, or you can email international@sba.gov. This is an ever-changing field. The highlights on the new Japan agreement, super interesting. Happy to talk a little bit about this. I know there may be some interest in China as well. Next round of negotiations, again, engaging in things like issues like forced technology transfer, weak IP protection, industrial subsidies, we know adversely impact U.S. small businesses and small businesses throughout the world, actually. And then if I can just be of any help, if the Chamber needs introductions, if you're considering doing trade missions and other things, we're happy to partner on that.
We do have one coming up, so.
That's great. But in a nutshell, my main message is take advantage of SBA in whatever way we can. Reach out to us. And our success is your success. So thank you.
Thank you, Michele. Is there any questions in the audience? I would like to ask. Okay.
Hi, my name is Rita Reed. I'm curious about whether you interact in any way with currency devaluations, and I'm also kind of curious about the ongoing trade issues that have been in the news lately and what your perspective is about some of the trade activities that have been going on.
So we do not get involved in the currency devaluations or anything. We do, our trade specialists certainly watch that carefully. The issues that the administration has been taking on in terms of the overall China, the way that U.S. businesses are disadvantaged, we're very optimistic that this next round has promising possibilities to make real advancements in what was an inequitable prior agreement. And again, the Japan agreement has, mostly in the agriculture arena, advanced the interests of U.S. agricultural exporters tremendously with a super influential trading partner. So we find these very promising. There are other trade negotiations we're watching. We're hopeful on the U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement as well that if ratified could open up a lot along the borders of the United States for trade people who aren't currently exporting that might enter in Mexico or Canada.
Hi, my name is Raj. I kind of walked in a little bit late. For the import-export, just a basic question, I could be off base, not sure. But I'm working with coffee right now. So Colombian coffee in a different region of Colombia. They're willing to supply me coffee in which I'm going to be purchasing and selling it to a company in the United States and California. Now, as far as getting a loan and stuff like that, how do you measure the percentage of the rate of the loan? So basically, I'm looking for a loan about $500,000 for now. But I'm just trying to see how does one apply for those kind of loans. And my second question that will work with that is, my credit isn't too good. So I'm just wondering, because I do have that, everything's in place. So my buyer has the money, and my supplier has the goods, so everything's in place. But my main question on this would be, since I'm the middleman, I want to make sure I have money in the account. So I don't know, like that's a question, just kind of have a scenario,
Yeah, we don't finance imports, logically, right? And that's the piece. We don't provide loans that finance imports. So I think I'd be happy to put you in touch with our local the individual who knows the loan portfolio especially well, can talk to you about rates, who the major lenders are in this region, and any lenders that may specialize in cases where the credit isn't ideal. So I'd be happy to share that information with you afterwards.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Michele. Our next panelist is Larry Macklin. And Larry is a managing director and wealth strategist at Bank of America Private Bank. In this role, Larry coordinates the development and delivery of innovative strategies and solutions for high net worth individuals and families, helping them pursue their goals in financial and estate planning, insurance, risk management, wealth transfer, intergenerational planning, business succession, pre- and post-liquidity event strategies, and philanthropy. We're so thankful to have you here, Larry, to share some ideas on income taxation consideration.
Thank you very much, Laura. So, beginning of last year, income tax laws regarding for businesses changed dramatically. And because of that, the question as to how you should operate your business and what type of entity has become much less clear. And so Laura has asked me just to talk a few minutes about helping you work through those changes in the tax law. So if we move to slide 3, I list the types of entities that you can operate your business in, and included in that list, actually first on the list, is the sole proprietorship, which is really not an entity, but I find that many of my clients who are business owners do, when I first meet them, are operating their business as a sole proprietorship. And what I would say is if you are in that role today, you want to change that. You don't want to be a sole proprietor, because as a sole proprietor, you're opening up all of your personal assets to the liabilities associated with the business. So you want to move your business into an entity to protect yourself, your personal assets, from the liabilities of the business. You want to operate a business as an entity, and you want to operate that business entity following all of the rules related to that entity. So the way you can operate a business in an entity form would be either as a partnership, where you would have 2 or more people together, 2 or more owners operating a business, or the other 3 could be just one owner or more than one owner as either a limited liability company a C corporation, or sometimes referred to as a regular corporation, or a subchapter S corporation, or sometimes just referred to as an S corporation, which is a tax concept. Page 4, please. So there's really only two entities that are tax-paying entities themselves. A regular or a C corporation is a tax-paying entity, and a limited liability company, an LLC, can elect, if it wants to be taxed as a corporation. And if it elects to be taxed as a corporation, as opposed to a partnership under the tax law, it can then make a separate election to actually be taxed as an S corporation. But if it doesn't make that election, it will be taxed as a regular corporation. Regular corporation really being the only entity that is subject to income taxation at the entity level. After that tax is paid at the entity level, then there is a second level of tax when the entity then distributes or passes through profits to the owner, either as a form of compensation, which would tax at the individual level that income as ordinary income, and if not, it would pass that the profits through after taxation to the owners as a dividend. And if a dividend occurs, preferred tax rates may apply, and I'll explain how that is. So it depends, the tax treatment depends on how it's paid out of the corporation. Page 5. The other entities are generally referred to as pass-through income tax entities because there is no tax generally at the entity level. The profits of the entity pass through to the owners from a tax perspective, regardless of whether or not actual tax or money distributions occur. The actual profits distribute to the owners, and the tax is paid at the owner level on their individual tax return. So a partnership, share of partnership profits for each partner passes through. An S corporation, which is limited to certain corporations, will pass through. Most LLCs generally elect to tax themselves as a partnership, so they don't have to pay the entity level tax. And again, the income or profits will pass through and be taxed on their individual tax return to the owners. And then LLCs that, if they want to elect to be taxed as a corporation and then also make the election to be taxed as an S corporation, that income will pass through as well. So on page 6, I give you one of the big changes that has occurred in the tax law. So for corporate entities that actually pay taxes, before 2018, they paid tax at the highest rate. Generally, all their profits were taxed at the corporate level at 35%, which was deemed to be a disadvantage for U.S. corporations because corporations in those other countries are taxed at much lower rates. And so one of the major aspects of the tax law that changed beginning in 2018 is corporations that do pay tax, the regular corporations, pay tax now at 21%, a 14% reduction. Very significant reduction in tax, especially when you look at individuals. If you look at individuals prior to 2018 would pay tax at the highest income tax rates of 39.6%. Those tax rates dropped a little bit, but much less significantly, as you see. After 2017, now, the highest individual income tax rate, 37%. So if you operate a business that passes through their income and you're taxed at the highest individual tax rate, that income will be taxed at 37% now, instead of 21% at the corporate level. But you need to remember that if you have a corporation that's paying tax at only 21%, it then pays tax for that those profits are then subject to tax again when the profits are passed through to the individual owners, presumably as dividends or possibly as compensation. And so that's important to remember. So the double taxation occurs for regular C corporations, only one level of tax for pass-through entities. So page 7. So because of this dramatic reduction in tax rates for regular corporations, the new tax law said, well, we need to provide something for the small businesses that have been operating as pass-through entities and give them some compensation so that they can also feel that they benefited from the new tax law. And so what was developed was a very new concept in the tax law called the 20% qualified business income deduction. And it is an incredibly complex aspect of the new tax law. So whenever they talk about tax simplification, that did not occur with this new tax law, unfortunately. This is a real complicated provision that applies to certain pass-through entity income, not all pass-through entity income. It applies only at the individual taxpayer level. If it is applicable to the individual who's taxed at the highest tax rate of 37%, that 20% deduction will effectively reduce their rate to 29.6% of that income. Now 29.6 is better than 37, but still higher than that corporate tax rate of 21% that applies for regular corporations now under the new tax law. So page 8, when does the 20% qualified business income deduction not apply? So if I operate a pass-through business, wouldn't I be able to get this 20% pass-through qualified business income deduction? Well, you have to have a trade or business. So if you're operating some kind of investment entity, that's a pass-through entity, an LLC or a S corporation, this deduction doesn't apply. It only applies to trade or businesses. And it also does not apply to most service businesses. In the tax law, they're called specified service businesses. Generally, if you're in a service business, you will not qualify for the 20% deduction. Page 9. In addition, even if you do qualify for the 20% business deduction for pass-through entities, there's a lot of limitations in the law in addition to for businesses that are not service business. So let's say you're a manufacturing business. You would think you'd qualify for the deduction. But the deduction is limited in one of two ways. First, it's limited to the greater of 50% of what are deemed qualified wages of the business. Or if it's a greater amount, only 25% of the qualified wages plus 2.5% of what are deemed qualified capital expenditures. Very, very complex law. So first you figure out, am I a qualified business? If I am, what is 20% of my deduction? Then you go to these limitations to see if you have enough wages or wages and capital to continue to qualify for the full 20% deduction. In addition, if your taxable income is very high, you may also get phased out of this deduction. So if your income is below the threshold you see here on the slide on page 9, for married, filing jointly, or single, you don't have a taxable income limit, and you don't actually have to worry about the wage and capital expenditure limitation. But if your income is above these thresholds, that's when you begin to have to worry about these limitations. And again, a very complex tax law, but know that if you're a service business, you likely won't qualify for the 20% deduction. And if your business generates significant income, then you need to have significant wages or wages and capital expenditures to get the full deduction. Page 10. So what if I operate as a regular corporation because I really want that 21% maximum tax rate? Well, remember, there's two levels of taxes for those types of entities. They pay tax at 21% at that corporate level, and then when the income, the profits after tax, are passed through to the owners so that the owners can actually spend some of that money, there's a second level of tax. If the owner operates, is operating the business, well, then maybe it's from their compensation. Business pays them compensation, gets a deduction at the business level, but then that income is taxed on their personal tax return. Well, when will it be taxed? It'll be taxed when that compensation is paid. And it'll be taxed at ordinary income rates as high as 37% now for individuals, as opposed to the qualified dividend preferred tax rate, which is 15% at the first level, and then on high income amounts, 20%. If it's not paid out as compensation and it's paid out in the form of profits as dividends, when will those dividends be paid? They don't have to be paid in the year of the earnings, they can be paid in a later year. And so you have to consider the time value of money. I'm going to pay a second level of tax as a C corporation. maybe at the preferred tax rates, 15 or 20%, but I don't have to pay that in the year I earn the profits. I only pay that when the dividends are distributed out of the corporation. Maybe the corporation accumulates some dividends or some profits for several years before it actually pays out a dividend. Eventually, it likely will have to pay that dividend. For example, if the corporation liquidates or more likely is sold, at that point in time, you can no longer wait. You're going to have that second level of tax. And in addition, the corporate tax laws say that if you don't distribute the profits so that they are taxed the second time, then unless they're being accumulated for a reason inside the business will pay an accumulated earnings tax. So you can only accumulate profits for so long before a second level of tax will apply. And when considering operating as a pass-through entity and hopefully qualifying for the qualified business income deduction, what made the tax law changes beginning last year even more complex is that some of the changes are permanent and some of them are temporary. And when I say permanent, as you see on my slide here, I put permanent in quotes because tax laws are only as permanent until the next administration changes those laws. So the corporate tax rate now dropping to 21% was a permanent change in the tax law. Hopefully won't be changed in the future. It's not scheduled to be changed in the future, but could be. The 20% qualified business income deduction on pass-through entities, that, however, is an 8-year change. It's only available until the end of year 2025. And then that deduction disappears. All of the temporary changes in the tax laws that became effect last year changed, including the reduction of the tax rate on individuals from 39.6 to 37%. So which entity to choose on page 11 when I'm operating my business? Well, unfortunately, the answer really depends. First, will your business qualify for the qualified business income deduction of 20%, which may have a big impact on whether or not you operate as a pass-through entity or choose to operate as a regular corporation. If you choose to operate as a regular corporation, when will you as the owner pay that second level of tax? And will you pay that second level of tax as partly compensation taxed at higher rates or as dividends taxed at preferred rates? And then if you're potentially growing your business for a sale, which most people are thinking about at the small level, when will that sale occur? Because that second level of tax will occur for a regular corporation at that time. And then the age-old question is, will the tax laws also change in the future? And although I don't know for sure, I would say likely they will. Exactly how they will change, that I don't know. And with that, I hope I've at least given you the considerations to think about as far as how to choose a business entity regarding taxation. I'm happy to take questions, Laura.
Okay. Is there any questions in the, okay.
Well, I want to know what kind of entity, kind of business is applied so people do not pay taxes like Amazon or truck company, things like that.
Very large companies most likely have to be taxed as a regular corporation because of various limitations in the tax law for who can be shareholders of the pass-through type entities. But there are many loopholes in the tax law that allow for deductions that are sometimes paper deductions or timing deductions, which may reduce their income so that they're not paying tax this year, but they may be deferring the tax into a future year. It's hard to say. Those are sometimes also available to pass-through entities as well. But income tax loopholes have been closed up over the years, so it's much less likely in 2019 that a company who actually is making profits or not paying taxes than it was maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
All right, one last question. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And we have the lunch and break. Yeah, we have